No one's done this yet, so I'm going to be the first. Today, we're going to be looking at I Am the Doctor by Murray Gold. It's a brilliant piece of music. There's quite a lot going on in it, though. So let's take a listen. Okay, so the first thing to notice about this piece is that it's in an odd time signature. It's in 7/8. Typically, when dealing with odd time signatures like 7/8 or 7/4, we tend to think of the effect being that the piece sounds incomplete. We always look for patterns of 4 and patterns of 8, and when we hear a pattern of 7, it feels like we're one beat short of being in a stable pattern. However, in this case, we have 7 beats, but we actually have 8 distinct notes being played. And this is different from if we were to have 7 distinct notes for each beat. That would sound something like. Or maybe. So because we actually have 8 notes across 7 beats, it does feel like a complete phrase. The effect that 7/8, our odd time signature, is having is that it's making it feel quite unstable and quite chaotic, especially due to the frantic nature of the notes being played. The speed especially is very fast. It's very frantic, which is great for the 11th Doctor. The other thing to point out is that we're in D minor, obviously. So what we're doing is we're starting in our root D, quite simple, and we're moving up to our subdominant G, our fourth, and we're getting there via each degree in the scale. So D, E, F, G. So, but most significantly, we're getting to G via F, which gives us a minor tonality because that's our minor third there. You can also hear D minor in the bass, because in the bass we're doing D, and then very quickly we go to B flat, which is what is going to distinguish this from any other key. So the next thing that happens is that we get this. I wouldn't go so far as to call it an ostinato, but it's very similar. It's a very groovy pattern. It's essentially just guiding us through the odd time signature, trying to make it feel as normal as possible. That melody itself, that phrase, that's not evenly paced. So we have essentially one beat on each note, except for when we reach our subdominant G, and at the end of the phrase as well to even it out. And what this does is this adds to the feeling of instability that was created by the meter. So we have an even pattern, 1, 2, 3, but then a very quick 4. These quick notes create chaos and instability and provide the feeling of franticness and a fast pace. So let's look at those chords in the bass. So we start off with a D minor, and then we go down to a B flat major, and then we come back up to C major, and then what we do is we go back to D, essentially, but instead of having an A in the bass to make it the implied D minor, we actually have a G in the bass, which would imply G minor, because that's what would be in the key, but we never actually hear the tonality of that G chord, not until later in the piece, which is where all this tonality is going to become important. So those chords are essentially D minor, B flat major, C major, and then G power chord, and then repeat. Okay, so at this point we get our first variation. So once coming out of this, we finally make it down to C. This is a note we've been avoiding in our melody. The thing that's interesting about this variation is that it's perfectly in key until it isn't. We start in C and then run up D minor up to the flat sixth. But then once we're here, we go to the G sharp, which is not in key. Now, where is that G sharp coming from? Well, if we listen further, we'll find out. See, there, we hit a B. That's also not in key. That B with a G in the bass gives us what sounds like a G major chord. So we're flipping between G major and G minor. Okay, so from this position, we start climbing up the scale from our root. All as expected. That's not correct, but it gets even stranger. So that was really weird. We hit F sharp and we hit G sharp, both not in key, and when our strings were ascending as well, they started on B and they moved up to C sharp. None of those are in key. So what's going on there? Well, interestingly enough, we've moved from D minor to actually a mode of D. We've used D Lydian, which is a bright and happy mode, and we can see that when we use D Lydian compared with D minor, which was the key that we were in, the tone of the piece is going to change, because our third, which dictates our tonality of the piece, that was minor. But when we start using Lydian, what's going to happen is that third, that F, that's going to become F sharp, which is a major third. So what's happening is the piece has got a great contrast between minor and major, and it's this push and pull between the two different tonalities that is really going to characterize this entire piece. There's a lot of tension in this piece, namely from the chaos and the franticness that we're trying to convey. And switching between tones like this is a really great way to emphasize that. It makes us ask where we're going to land. How are we going to resolve? Are we going to resolve into major, or are we going to stay in minor? Okay, so this here, this is a really good example of this. So we have our chords here. We have C major here, that's in key. And then we have G major, that's not in key. D major, definitely not in the key of D minor. And then we have G minor, which is in key. E major, which is not in key. F major there, which is in key. G minor, which is in key. G minor, which is in key. An augmented C minor chord, which is not in key. And then C major, which is in key. So we are resolving. We're resolving into D minor. C major is in D minor, absolutely. However, it's also C major, which is a happy chord. The tonality is major, even though we've resolved back into our minor key. And what the Lydian mode has done when we flick between our major and minor tonalities is it's essentially preparing us for a key change, which is going to happen later when we repeat a similar sort of thing. In this case, when we go back to C major, we've resolved back into D minor and we're back in key, and then we just resume our original idea like we had before, which is... and then we repeat. Okay, so in this next section here, we're in 4. We've moved out of 7/8 and we're into a more stable meter. We can count it now. And There's nothing really strange going on here. Everything is in key as we would expect. And what that's doing is reflecting the stability of our meter. So we're in 4/4, we're in a stable idea, the chaos has subsided, and what we can do is we can introduce a motif which is going to sound stronger than anything we've heard thus far. And changing the meter like this makes that motif much more memorable. It also gives the motif a feeling of strength, which is exactly what we want, because we want this to be the heroic part of the theme for 11. So what's happening there is we're sort of moving. So what's happening in this section is that we have a D in the bass, and then we move up to an F. So what this part is really doing is really emphasizing the relative major of D minor, which is F major. So in this part, we have. So let's say we're moving between D and our minor third, so we have a D minor sound. And then what we do is we move the D down a full tone, so we essentially go to C and F. And that gives us an implied F major, because F is the fifth. So we just have, it's like having an inverted F major chord. So we're really emphasizing the relative major of our key, which is a great way to change tonalities whilst staying within the same key and not having to resort to using different modes. Yeah, so we have this really strong motif meant to represent the heroic nature of this Doctor, and we resolve back to our D. It's really nice. Just great, really strong, just moving up the scale, but a really strong idea. Right, really interesting. So, as soon as that brass comes back in, the chaos of the piece has come back from the relative stability that we just had. And as soon as that happens, the Lydian mode creeps back in. We shift from D minor to D Lydian. And remember when we were shifting between G major and G minor? Well, that's exactly what we're doing here. What's going on there is we're switching between D minor, and then we're going up to the minor third of G, and then to the major third, which is part of the Lydian mode. And when we're doing that, we're switching between our major and our minor tones, and we're left with that question again. Where are we going to land this time? Last time we resolved to D minor, albeit through C major. Are we going to resolve back to D minor this time? Or are we going to stay major? And what we get there is we get a G major. And then we get a G major again, just with the major third a lower octave. So it's actually the same tone, it just sounds lower, but it's the same chord. And then where we go from here is we go from to B flat major. Another major chord, but still resolving to D minor. And after hitting that B flat major, we change key entirely to C major. The Lydian mode has set us up perfectly for this key change. It sounds totally natural. Well, it's not a huge difference, still needs to be set up, and the Lydian mode is what Murray Gold is using to set us up for that key change to C major. And by making this key change to C major, it would seem like the aim is to provide stability and a more comforting key, less chaos. Exactly what the aim was when we resolved to D minor the last time and we changed meter to 4/4. The difference is here, even though we've resolved to a happier, more comfortable key, our meter has changed back to 7/8. Those runs are just so lovely. Those. It's just running down the scale. It's just through the degrees, go from E to B, which is the fifth, but in this case, E is the fourth B. Such lovely chords. It goes from D minor to F major to C major and then back to G major. It's such a wonderful progression. So even though the meter is unstable, the chords are just so gorgeous and warm. But where the meter comes important is in our next transition into the final section. Right, so there, our tonal center changes. We're resolving all these in C, you know, but then our tonal center shifts up a semitone from C to D. I would call this a key change. At no point in this section do we ever hear a B or a B flat, which would indicate to us whether or not this was in D minor or not. Because that's the only difference between D minor and C major, you could essentially consider this all in C major without having a key change. However, because our bass shifts up, our root moves up, I would consider this a key change back into D minor because it's essentially building off of the original idea we had, which was, and this idea is. This idea is one that we've heard before in an unreleased piece of music called Fighting the Flood. But now the purpose of staying in 7/8 in the C major section makes so much sense because it means that we can enter the odd time signature now and it not to feel jarring. It feels natural. It feels tense because we've changed key from C major to D minor, but the time signature isn't what feels weird about it. It definitely adds to the tension. Oh, that is nice, that. The reason that sounds so good is because we're starting on our route and we don't venture further than our third. The highest we go is here. So whereas before what we were doing is we were going stopping at our G, which is funny enough the same thing that all the Strange Creatures does, where it goes. It never reaches up to the fifth. It never quite makes it. It always stops at G. But why is all the Strange Creatures such a great tense driving piece of music? Well, because it essentially starts on the route and then moves up to the third, and then only at the end does it explore. But because we're moving up to that third, we have tension because it's a minor triad. It's a very tense idea, and the reason is because we're starting on our route and then going up to our minor third, but never going any further than that. And when combined with the frantic escalation of the scale, it makes for a very intense and dramatic piece of music. Again, all in key, making it feel very strong, but also in 7/8, making it feel unstable. So it's the constant fluctuation between major and minor tonality, as well as the constantly changing time signature between 7/8 and 4/4 that makes this piece so exciting to listen to.